My house turns to dust in the storm. I drag 3 trash bags, everything left from 70 years of life, and stand at my son's door, knocking to be let in. He opens it, his eyes showing no anger, no joy, only distance. Angela leans close to his ear, her voice cutting like a blade. If he stays, then I go. My heart shatters, but what haunts me even more is this. Why does a father asking for shelter make them so afraid? I should probably tell you who I am before I go any further. My name is Richard, 70 years old. My hair turned white long before I was ready to admit it, and my face carries the lines of both time and work. Once, I was a factory mechanic, the kind of man who came home with grease under his nails and a sore back every night. For decades, I worked double shifts to make sure there was food on the table and a roof over our heads. I wasn't a man of luxury. I wasn't even a man of hobbies. My life was labor, sacrifice, and raising my son. I became a widower 8 years ago. My wife, Clara, passed quietly in her sleep. She had been my anchor, the only one who could soften my temper when life wore me down. Losing her hollowed me out in a way I didn't expect. The house grew quieter, meals lonelier, and the nights unbearably long. But I told myself I still had David, my boy, my blood, my reason for keeping on. I thought the bond we shared was unbreakable. David was 42 now, a tall man, with dark hair cut neat for his job as an insurance manager. He carried himself with the kind of pride that comes from wearing pressed shirts and polished shoes. He had a sharpness about him, a practicality that often made him seem distant. I knew he wasn't the type to speak much of feelings, but I believed deep down he still carried the memory of every sacrifice I had made. I believed a son could never forget the father who raised him with calloused hands and tired eyes. Then there was Angela, my son's partner, 35 years old, blonde hair, always put together in a way that suggested she lived half her life in boardrooms and glossy offices. She was sharp, outspoken, and strong-willed, the kind of woman who never seemed to second-guess herself. I never hated her, but I always sensed she looked at me the way one might look at an old chair, cluttering a modern room. Unnecessary, inconvenient, and something that didn't quite belong. The day the tornado struck was a Tuesday. I remember it exactly because I had just finished a late lunch, leftover stew and cornbread, when the sirens screamed across the sky. It was 3:15 in the afternoon. At my age, storms were nothing new, but this one was different. The sky twisted into a bruise, the air sucked itself into silence, and then the world roared. I barely had time to grab my wallet and a small bag before I threw myself into the cramped storm shelter behind my house. When I climbed out an hour later, my home was gone. Not damaged, not battered, gone, as if some cruel hand had scooped it up and thrown it across the county. All that remained were splintered boards, scattered shingles, and the kind of silence that made my stomach drop. I stood there, staring at the wreckage, clutching my bag like a lifeline, feeling the weight of 70 years collapse with those walls. I told myself it was fine. Insurance would come through, houses could be rebuilt. But for now, I needed a place to sleep, a roof to keep the rain off my head. Naturally, I thought of David, my son, family. If blood meant anything at all, I believed it meant that in times of disaster, you don't knock on a stranger's door, you knock on your child's. So I walked, 3 garbage bags stuffed with whatever clothes and keepsakes I could salvage, slung over my tired shoulders. It took me hours to get to his neighborhood, the sun dipping low as I reached the 2-story colonial house with white shutters and a bright red door. It looked untouched by chaos, standing proud and perfect against the evening sky. For a moment, I felt relief, safety, hope. When David opened the door, he looked surprised to see me. Not angry, not warm, just surprised, like someone finding an unexpected package on their doorstep. He stepped aside and let me in, though his movements carried hesitation. Inside, the place smelled of fresh paint and lavender. Every surface gleamed. The carpet beneath my muddy shoes seemed too clean to step on. I felt like a shadow creeping into a museum. Angela appeared almost instantly. Her eyes darted to the garbage bags I held, then flicked to David. She didn't need to say a word for me to know she disapproved. Still, she whispered, "We need our own space, David," as though I couldn't hear. Her voice carried the edge of someone staking a claim, defending her territory. I set the bags down gently, my heart pounding in my chest. "I just need a place for a few weeks," I explained softly. "The insurance will take care of the rest. I won't be in the way." No one answered. The silence pressed against me harder than the storm had. My son avoided my eyes. Angela's lips tightened, and I felt the sharp sting of being an intruder in the one place where I should have felt at home. I sat there, perched on the edge of their spotless sofa, smelling faint traces of wine and lemon polish, trying to remind myself that this was my son, my boy, the one I held when he was sick, the one I carried on my shoulders through county fairs, the one I promised his mother I would never abandon. I never expected that the roles would reverse, that in my old age he might abandon me. And yet, as the silence stretched, I felt the truth settle heavy on my chest. I wasn't welcome here. I believed blood would shelter me. I thought bitterly, my hands gripping my knees. But I was wrong. That night, I lay awake on their guest bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled whispers between David and Angela in the next room. The storm outside had passed, but a storm far colder raged inside that house. I didn't know it yet, but that was only the beginning. I stand at my son's doorway with the last of my strength. My hands clutch the straps of 3 torn garbage bags, the only belongings I managed to salvage after the tornado. My house is gone, ripped apart in a single violent afternoon, the storm scattering decades of work and memory across Oklahoma soil. I think the worst is over, but the way David looks at me tells me otherwise. Inside his home, everything gleams. The walls are painted a soft beige, the air smells of lavender and polish, and the carpet beneath my wet shoes is so plush, I hesitate to step further. It feels like I am walking into a museum, not a home. For a moment, I expect comfort, warmth, maybe even a hug from the boy I raised. Instead, I feel myself shrinking into the silence of their perfect space. Angela appears almost immediately, a glass of wine in her hand, her blonde hair styled neatly, like she just stepped out of a magazine cover. Her lips curve downward as soon as her eyes land on me. She doesn't need to speak for me to know what she thinks, but she leans close to David and whispers loud enough for me to hear, "We need our own space." The way she says it cuts sharper than the winds that ripped through my house. I force a small smile, my voice quiet, steady. "It's only for a few weeks. Just until the insurance clears, I won't be in the way. You won't even notice I'm here." Angela says nothing. David nods slightly but avoids my eyes. His silence wounds me more than her words. I sit on the edge of their spotless sofa, my bags slumped against my legs like accusations. I tell myself this is temporary, that family always makes room, but deep down I already feel like an intruder in my own son's home. That night, I lie on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling while the muffled voices of David and Angela filter through the wall. Her tone is sharp, his is defensive, but weak. I hear my name once, twice, followed by the phrase, "boundaries," and "our life." I close my eyes, remembering the nights when Clara would whisper to me, her voice like a balm. "It'll be all right, Richard," she used to say. But she is gone now, and the only whispers I hear are about how unwanted I am. The next morning, I sit at the breakfast table. Angela scrolls through her phone, sipping coffee, her nails tapping the screen. David pours cereal into a bowl, his movements stiff. I try to break the silence. "Thank you both. I can't tell you how much this means. It's just temporary, you know. A couple of weeks at most." Angela sets her cup down and looks at me directly for the first time. Her tone is polite, but carries no warmth. "Richard, there's an extended stay hotel near the mall. It's not too expensive. They have everything you'd need. Kitchenette, laundry, privacy." She lingers on the last word, as if it is sacred. David clears his throat. "Maybe she's right, Dad. Just until things get sorted out. We can help with the cost, of course." My chest tightens. I look at him, my son, my boy, the child I carried on my shoulders at county fairs, the one who cried into my chest when his dog died. David, I say softly, I only need a few weeks. You're my family. If your mother were here— Don't, he interrupts quickly, his tone sharp, clipped. He doesn't want me to use Clara's memory as a shield. He doesn't want guilt woven into this moment. Angela sighs. It's not about not caring. It's about our boundaries. We can give you a few $100s to help you get settled somewhere comfortable. Isn't that fair? Fair. The word hits me like a hammer. Was it fair when I worked double shifts so David could have new shoes for school? Was it fair when I drove the same rusty truck for years so he could have a reliable car at college? Was it fair when Clara and I sacrificed vacations, new clothes, and comfort so that he would never go without? I don't need your money, I say, my voice trembling but firm. I need my son, just my son. The silence that follows is unbearable. Angela lifts her coffee again. David stirs his cereal, avoiding my gaze. The air in the room feels heavier than the storm shelter I hid in during the tornado. Finally, I push my chair back. The scrape of wood against tile echoes through the kitchen like thunder. I gather my bags and walk to the door. Nobody stops me. Nobody says, "Wait, Dad." The door clicks shut behind me, and I step out into the sunlight, carrying not only 3 bags, but also the weight of 70 years and the bitter truth that I am not welcome under my son's roof. I wander through the streets for hours. My legs ache, my shoulders burn, but I keep walking because I have nowhere else to go. At a bus stop, I sit on a bench, my bags piled around me. A young couple stands nearby, whispering, glancing at me, then turning away as if my presence is something contagious. I lower my head, ashamed though I've done nothing wrong. When the bus comes, I don't board. I have no destination. I watch it leave, the red taillights fading into the dusk, and remain on the bench until the air grows colder. By midnight, I find myself in a parking lot beside a closed diner. Its neon sign flickers weakly, buzzing like a dying insect. I sit on the curb with my bags like pitiful sentries around me. My stomach growls, and I think of the stew I left uneaten the day the storm struck. Hunger makes every memory sharper, crueler. I pull a photo from my wallet. Clara's face smiles back at me, the corners worn from years of being carried close. Her eyes hold the same softness they always did, the same unspoken promise that I am not alone. "I'm trying, Clara," I whisper into the night. "I swear I'm trying." Sleep is impossible. Every sound jolts me awake, the screech of tires, the laughter of passing teenagers, the roar of a truck engine in the distance. I feel less like a man and more like a ghost, haunting a world that has no place for me. The second night is worse. Hunger sharpens its teeth, gnawing at me. I duck into a convenience store just to feel the warmth, pretending to browse. The clerk's suspicious gaze follows me, his eyes lingering too long on my bags. I leave before he can ask me to. By the 3rd day, rain comes steady and merciless. My jacket soaks through, my bags sag heavy with water. I take shelter in an old car lent to me years ago by a friend from the factory. The engine is broken, but at least it keeps the rain off. I sit in the driver's seat, listening to the downpour hammer the roof, breathing in the musty scent of leather and rust. For the first time in days, I almost feel safe. Almost. As I fumble in my wallet for a few crumpled bills, my fingers brush against something stiff, tucked behind old receipts. I pull it out and stare. An old business card, edges frayed, ink fading but still readable. Michael Brown. I freeze, staring at the name. Michael, my high school friend, my first love, though I never had the courage to say it out loud. Decades have passed since we spoke, yet memories come rushing back. His steady gaze, his laugh, the way he once promised me a future I was too scared to claim. I sit there with the rain pounding overhead, the card trembling in my hands. I should throw it away. Tell myself it's foolish, too late. But the alternative is silence, hunger, loneliness. The alternative is fading into nothing on a park bench. I dial the number, my fingers shaking. The line rings once, twice. I almost hang up. But then a voice answers, warm, familiar, alive. Hello, my breath catches. Michael. It's Richard. There is a pause, then the sound of recognition floods through the line. His voice lifts with something that feels almost like joy. Richard, I still remember you. And in that moment, the rain outside softens. The car no longer feels so cold, and for the first time in days, maybe years, I feel the fragile spark of something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. The moment Michael's voice breaks through the static, I feel the years collapse. I am no longer an old man sitting in a broken car with rain dripping through the seams. I am 17 again, standing under the bleachers with him. The smell of cut grass in the air, his laughter spilling out like sunlight. He says my name, and it feels like the first breath I have taken in days. Where are you, Richard? He asks. His tone is calm but urgent, the kind of voice people use when they actually care about the answer. I hesitate. The shame clings to me heavier than the rain. I'm nowhere important. Just in town, lost my place in the storm. Don't trouble yourself. Don't trouble myself? He almost laughs, though it carries no humor. You're out there alone, aren't you? Tell me where you are. My voice cracks as I give him the name of the diner, the one with the flickering neon. I expect him to say he will call later, or that he will send someone. Instead, he says firmly, "Stay put. I'm on my way." The line clicks dead. I sit there, staring at the phone, half doubting the exchange even happened. My heart thunders in my chest, not from fear this time, but from something else, something warmer. 20 minutes later, headlights sweep across the parking lot. A sleek black SUV pulls up beside me, its tires hissing in the rain. The door opens, and Michael steps out. For a second, I hardly recognize him. His hair is silver now, cut close, but his frame is solid, his posture strong. His suit is damp at the shoulders from the rain, but he walks with purpose. "Richard," he says, and then I know it's really him, the same eyes, steady and kind. Without hesitation, he pulls me into an embrace. My soaked jacket presses against his tailored suit, but he doesn't flinch. He holds me like someone who has been waiting decades for this moment. "You're not a burden," he says, his voice low, close to my ear. "You're my friend. You always were." I can't answer. My throat tightens, my eyes sting, and for the first time since Clara's funeral, I let myself cry in someone's arms. He guides me into the car, loads my bags into the trunk as if they weigh nothing, and drives away from the empty lot. The leather seat beneath me is warm, the hum of the engine soothing. I glance at him, still half in disbelief. He looks forward, one hand steady on the wheel, as though picking up an old friend from a storm is the most natural thing in the world. His house is nothing like David's. Where David's feels polished, sterile, untouchable, Michael's estate feels alive. Stone walls, wood beams, windows glowing with warm light. When we step inside, the smell of baking bread greets us. A fire crackles in the hearth. The space is elegant, yes, but not cold. There are books stacked on side tables, framed photos on the walls, evidence of a life lived, not staged. "You'll stay here," he says, leading me to a guest room that feels more welcoming than any place I have been in years. The bedspread is thick and inviting, the walls lined with shelves of novels. "As long as you need, no arguments." I want to protest, to insist I won't intrude, but the words won't form. I sit on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the sudden shift from exile to shelter. Michael leaves me a moment, then returns with a tray. Soup, bread, hot tea. "You look like you haven't eaten in days," he says, watching as I lift the spoon. The warmth spreads through me, melting the cold that clung to my bones for so long. I finish the bowl, embarrassed by my hunger, but he only smiles. Later that night, as I lie beneath soft covers, I hear him moving about the house. The sound is steady, comforting. I think about David and Angela's whispers behind closed doors, and then about Michael's voice saying, "You're not a burden." The contrast slices me open. I close my eyes, and for the first time since the tornado, I sleep without fear of being pushed out into the night. The days that follow blur together in a strange rhythm. Michael insists I stay. He takes me on drives through town, showing me places that have changed, places that haven't. He introduces me to his staff, kind people who treat me not like a guest, but like someone who belongs. I try to help around the house, fixing small things, repairing a squeaky hinge, patching a section of the fence. He laughs when I bring out my old mechanic skills, but he lets me. Every evening we sit by the fire. Sometimes we talk about the past school dances, football games, the little diner where we used to sit for hours. Other times, we say nothing at all, just listening to the fire crackle. It is in those silences I feel the most whole. But peace never lasts long. One night, as I sit in Michael's living room, my phone rings. The name flashing on the screen makes my stomach twist. David. I hesitate before answering. His voice comes through cautious, almost rehearsed. Dad, I heard you're staying with Michael Brown. Is that true? Yes, I say simply. He's been kind to me. There's a pause. That's good. I was going to check on you. Angela and I wanted to invite you both to dinner. Maybe this weekend. The words sound strange, forced. I know him too well to believe it's out of sudden concern. Still, part of me longs for any scrap of reconciliation. Against my better judgment, I agree. When I hang up, Michael studies me with steady eyes. You don't owe them anything, Richard. I know, I whisper, but he's still my son. Michael nods, though his jaw tightens. He doesn't argue. Instead, he says, then we'll go together. And just like that, the storm shifts again, this time pulling me toward a confrontation I have dreaded my whole life. The night of the dinner arrives sooner than I expect. Michael drives us in his SUV, the headlights cutting through the dusk as we approach David's neighborhood. My chest tightens with every turn. I picture Angela's sharp eyes, David's silence, the kitchen where I last sat, feeling like an unwanted guest. I almost ask Michael to turn back, but the thought of my son waiting at the table holds me still. David's house glows brightly as we pull into the driveway. The red door looks just as pristine as before, as though no storm ever touched this place. Michael cuts the engine and turns to me. Richard, he says softly, remember, you don't owe them more than your truth. That's enough. I nod, though my hands tremble. We step inside, and immediately Angela greets us with her polished smile. She kisses the air near my cheek, then does the same with Michael, her movements stiff but practiced. The dining room is set beautifully, candles, polished silverware, a roast in the center of the table. The display screams hospitality, but beneath it I feel the tension humming like a live wire. David appears, shaking Michael's hand firmly, avoiding my eyes for a moment too long. Dad, he says finally, I'm glad you came. End. I want to believe him, but the words feel like they are spoken through clenched teeth. We take our seats. For a few minutes, conversation flows in shallow waters, Michael complimenting the roast, Angela discussing her latest work project, David asking about the storm damage. I answer politely, but every word feels forced, like we are actors reading lines from a bad script. Finally, Michael sets down his fork, his gaze steady on David. His voice is calm but firm, like a man addressing a truth long overdue. David, he says, your father doesn't need your approval. He needs the love of his son. Do you love him, or do you just love what you think you can gain from keeping him at a distance? The room falls silent. Angela stiffens, her fork pausing mid-air. David's face reddens, his jaw working. He opens his mouth, closes it, then stares at his plate. The silence stretches so long, I can hear the ticking of the clock in the hallway. I sit frozen, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. For years I have carried the weight of sacrifice, of fatherhood given freely, expecting only love in return. To hear someone else, Michael, of all people, speak those words aloud cracks something inside me wide open. Angela clears her throat, her eyes lowered. For once, she has no sharp reply, David finally exhales, his voice low, almost breaking. I don't know how to love him right, he admits. I grew up watching him work himself into the ground. I thought love meant leaving him alone, giving him space. But maybe I was wrong. The admission hits me harder than any rejection, not because it excuses what he did, but because it is the first time I hear my son confess uncertainty, vulnerability. He has always been the boy who wanted to appear strong, practical, unshaken. Tonight, for a brief moment, he is just my son again. I reach across the table, my hand trembling, and place it over his. He doesn't pull away. His hand is warm, heavy, familiar. David, I whisper, I never asked for perfection. I only ever asked to be your father. That's all. The candles flicker. The room breathes again. Angela shifts in her seat, her eyes glistening though she hides it quickly. Michael leans back, his face calm, as though he knew this moment was waiting for us all along. The rest of dinner passes quietly. We eat, but it feels different now, less like a performance, more like a truce. When it's time to leave, David walks us to the door. He hesitates, then says, Dad, can I call you? Just to check in? My throat closes around the words, but I manage to nod. Yes, I'd like that. Outside, the air is cool, the stars breaking through the clouds. As Michael drives us back to his estate, I stare out the window, my heart heavy, yet lighter than it has been in weeks. For the first time, I feel defended, seen, and most of all, no longer alone. Michael glances at me as the road curves beneath the headlights. You've carried this for too long, he says quietly. It's time you let yourself be cared for. I look at him, at the man who has stepped into my storm without hesitation, who has offered me not just shelter but dignity. Thank you, I whisper, my voice breaking. For everything. He doesn't reply. He only places a steady hand on the wheel, guiding us home. And as the night stretches out before us, I realize that for the first time in a long while, I have more than survival. I have the beginning of something I never dared to hope for again, a second chance at family and maybe, just maybe, a second chance at love. I wake the next morning with sunlight streaming across the room Michael has given me. For a moment, I forget where I am. The bed is too soft, the walls too warm, the quiet too peaceful. It takes a few seconds before memory settles in his house, the dinner at David's, the words spoken that still echo in my ears. I sit up slowly, rubbing my eyes, and realize something I haven't felt in years. I don't dread the day ahead. Michael is already in the kitchen when I walk downstairs. The smell of coffee fills the air, rich and strong. He looks up from the paper and smiles, the kind of smile that reaches his eyes. Morning, Richard. You sleep well? Better than I have in weeks, I admit. Taking a seat, I sip the coffee he sets in front of me, the heat warming my chest. Thank you again for last night. For everything. He waves a hand, dismissing my gratitude as though kindness is the most natural thing in the world. That's what friends are for. Yet the way he looks at me holds something more than friendship, though neither of us names it. The days begin to follow a rhythm. Michael's staff treat me with gentle respect, never questioning my presence. I spend mornings tinkering with small repairs around the property, a loose shutter, a squeaky gate, a stubborn faucet. My hands remember the motions, even if my back complains. It feels good to be useful again, to contribute something instead of existing like a burden. In the afternoons, Michael sometimes drives me into town. We pass the library, the old football field, the diner where we used to sit as teenagers. He points out new buildings, changes in the skyline. But what strikes me most is how easily we slip into conversation. Decades may have passed, but the rhythm between us feels as natural as breathing. One evening after a quiet dinner, we sit by the fireplace. The flames flicker, shadows dancing across the stone walls. Michael leans back, his glass of wine in hand. You know, he says, I used to wonder what happened to you. After high school, you just disappeared. Lo, I stare into the fire, memories tugging at me. Life happened. Clara, the factory, raising David. There wasn't room for anything else. I told myself it was enough. And was it? He asks gently. I pause, searching for honesty. At times, yes. Clara was a good woman. David, he was my whole world. But sometimes, late at night, I wondered about choices, about roads not taken. Michael studies me, his expression soft. I wondered too. The silence between us is not heavy but full, layered with years unsaid. I feel the weight of regret pressing against me, but also the strange comfort of knowing I am not alone in it. The turning point comes unexpectedly on a Thursday afternoon. I am out in the garden, trimming dead branches, when my phone buzzes in my pocket. I pull it out, half expecting a call from a telemarketer. Instead, it is David. Dad. His voice is tentative, uncertain. Yes, David, I'm here. There is a long pause. I hear background noise cars, maybe his office. Finally, he says, I wanted to check on you, just to see if you're doing okay. The words are simple, but they pierce me. My throat tightens. I'm fine. Michael's been looking after me. Another pause. Good. That's good. His voice drops lower, almost ashamed. I'm sorry, Dad, for how I handled things, for how I treated you. I close my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. For years, I waited for those words, and now that they are here, I feel both relief and sorrow. Thank you for saying that, son. It means more than you know. We talk only a few minutes more, nothing profound, just weather, work, small details. But when I hang up, I sit in the garden for a long time, staring at the flowers. Something has shifted. Not healed, not fully, but shifted. That night, I tell Michael about the call. He nods, listening, then places a hand on my shoulder. See, seeds take time to grow, sometimes longer than we want, but they grow. I look at him, the firelight softening his features, and realize he has become more than a friend. He has become the shelter I never thought I'd find again, the voice reminding me that life does not end just because storms come. Still, doubt lingers. I wonder if I deserve this second chance at companionship, at love, at family. I wonder if it is too late. But then I remember the way David's voice sounded on the phone, uncertain but reaching. I remember Michael's embrace in the rain, his words, "You're not a burden." I realize that maybe, just maybe, it is not too late at all. The turning point is not one grand moment, but a collection of small ones. A son's hesitant apology, an old friend's unwavering kindness, the quiet realization that I am still alive, still capable of being loved and of giving love. And for the first time in years, I begin to believe that the chapters ahead may hold more than loneliness. They may hold redemption. The weeks settle into a strange rhythm. Michael and I share meals, stories, even silence, and each day I feel myself regaining pieces of the man I thought the storm had carried away. Yet I know there is unfinished business between me and David, a wound still raw despite his apology. The call gave me hope, but it also left me restless. I find myself wondering, does he really mean it, or was it just guilt? One Friday evening, as I sit on the porch watching the sun set, my phone buzzes again. David's name flashes on the screen. I answer, bracing myself. His voice sounds steadier this time, more deliberate. Dad, Angela and I want to invite you and Michael over again. This time, not for a performance, just dinner, just us. The words surprise me. I hesitate, searching for cracks, for hidden motives. But I hear something different in his tone. Uncertainty, yes, but also sincerity. All right, I say. We'll come. Michael drives us that Sunday. The tension in my chest builds with every mile. When we arrive, the house looks the same, white shutters, red door, but the air feels different. David greets us at the door, his expression softer, less guarded. Angela stands behind him, her arms crossed, but her smile, though thin, seems less forced. Dinner begins quietly. The roast is simple, the table less formal than before. Conversation flows awkwardly at first, then steadies. David asks about Michael's business. Angela asks about the repairs I've been making around the estate. I answer carefully, watching them both, waiting for the ground to shift. Halfway through the meal, it does. Angela sets down her fork, her eyes narrowing slightly. Richard, can I ask you something? Why didn't you ever prepare better? Savings, retirement plans, something that would keep you from ending up desperate. The question lands heavy. David shifts uncomfortably, but doesn't stop her. Heat rises in my chest. Because, Angela, every dollar I earned went into raising David, into food, clothes, school, into making sure he had the life I never did. Preparation meant nothing if my son went without. David's face tightens, shame flickering across it. Angela, he begins, but I cut him off. No, I say firmly, my voice trembling but strong. She should hear this, and so should you. Do you know how many nights I came home too tired to eat, too sore to stand, but I still sat at your bedside to make sure you slept peacefully? Do you know how many times Clara begged me to slow down, to rest, and I said no because you needed shoes, books, a chance? Every choice I made for you, David. The room goes still. Angela lowers her gaze, her bravado slipping. David's eyes glisten, his lips pressed tight. Michael sits beside me, silent but steady, his presence a wall of support. I lean forward, my hands trembling on the table. I never asked for much in return, not money, not gifts, only respect, only love. And when I came to your door, after losing everything, I thought you'd give me that. Instead, you turned me away. David's voice breaks. I was wrong. I thought helping meant money, boundaries, privacy. I didn't realize what you needed most was me. I see it now. God, Dad, I see it. Tears blur my vision. For years, I dreamed of hearing those words, and now they are here, raw and unpolished. I reach across the table, my hand finding his. He doesn't pull away this time. His grip is firm, desperate, full of the love I feared was gone. Michael clears his throat, his voice cutting through the emotion but anchoring it. Richard doesn't need pity. He doesn't need excuses. He needs his son. And if you can give him that, if you truly mean it, then you'll both find something you've been missing. David nods quickly, his shoulders shaking. I'll try. I swear I'll try. The candles flicker. The silence that follows is no longer hostile, but heavy with possibility. For the first time, I believe reconciliation might be real. The drive back from David's house that night feels different. The air in the SUV is quiet, but it is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of something fragile, something just beginning to mend. I stare out the window, watching the streetlights blur into streaks of gold, and feel my chest loosen for the first time in months. Michael keeps his eyes on the road, but every so often he glances at me, making sure I am steady. When we reach his estate, I step out into the night air and tilt my head back toward the stars. The Oklahoma sky stretches wide, endless, and for the first time since the tornado, I don't feel swallowed by it. I feel held. I turn to Michael. Thank you, I whisper. Not just for tonight, for everything. I wouldn't have made it this far without you. He places a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm and grounding. You don't have to thank me. I'm not saving you, Richard. I'm standing with you. There's a difference. Those words echo in me long after I go to bed. In the days that follow, David begins to call more often. The first time, it is brief, just a question about my health, a clumsy attempt at small talk. The second time, he asks if I need anything. By the third call, his voice is steadier, his laughter slipping into the conversation. Each time, I feel the wall between us thinning, brick by brick. It is not perfect. It is not what it once was. But it is something. Angela remains a question mark. She is polite on the phone, even kind at times, but I sense her distance. Perhaps she is ashamed. Perhaps she still resents me. I do not push her. My battle is not with her. It is with the silence that once lived between me and my son. Michael notices the change in me. One evening, as we sit by the fire, he says, "You're standing straighter, carrying yourself lighter. You've been waiting years for this, haven't you?" I nod slowly. All I ever wanted was to know my son still saw me as his father. Not a burden, not an obligation, just his father. Michael smiles faintly, his eyes soft in the firelight. And now you do. There is another shift that takes place quietly, almost unnoticed at first. It is the bond between me and Michael. We share more than memories now. We share mornings on the porch, evenings by the fire, walks through the garden where silence feels as intimate as conversation. He listens without judgment, laughs at my stubborn jokes, steadies me when my knees ache. He doesn't make me feel old, he makes me feel alive. One afternoon, as I repair a broken hinge on the garden gate, he stands beside me, watching. You know, he says, you don't have to keep proving your worth by fixing things. Your worth isn't measured in chores. I look up, sweat dripping down my temples, and smile faintly. Old habits die hard. For years, work was how I showed love. It's how I survived. He nods, his expression thoughtful. Maybe now, it's time to let love survive on its own. His words strike me deeply. For decades, I believed love had to be earned through sacrifice, through sweat and labor. Now I wonder if love, true love, asks only for presence. The climax of this chapter in my life arrives one evening when David visits Michael's estate. It is unannounced, unexpected. I see his car pulling up the long driveway, my heart pounding as he steps out, looking uncertain, almost boyish despite his age. "Dad," he says, standing before me, "I wanted to see where you've been staying. I wanted to see you." I lead him inside, nervous, but Michael greets him warmly, offering him coffee. We sit in the living room, the fire casting light across the walls. David looks around, taking in the warmth, the books, the photos. "This place suits you," he says finally. "It feels like home." The word hits me hard. For so long I felt exiled, unwanted, stripped of belonging. Now my son stands in front of me, acknowledging that I belong somewhere, even if it isn't under his roof. We talk for hours that night. David asks about my work at the factory, stories he never bothered to hear when he was younger. He asks about Clara, memories I haven't spoken aloud in years. He even asks about Michael, and when I explain how far back our friendship goes, he listens quietly, his eyes full of something like respect. When he finally leaves, he hugs me. It is awkward, brief, but it is real. His arms are strong, his grip firm, and for a moment, I feel the boy he once was, the boy who clung to me at the county fair, who cried when his dog died. I hold on to him a second longer than he expects, and he doesn't pull away. As his car disappears down the drive, Michael stands beside me. "He's coming back to you," he says softly. I nod, my chest swelling with a mixture of grief and gratitude. "Yes," I whisper, slowly, "but Ireland." That night, I lie in bed and realize something extraordinary. The storm that destroyed my house did not end my life. It began a new one. It pushed me out of the silence, forced me into the arms of someone who remembers me, into the path of a son who still needs me. It showed me that sometimes destruction is not the end, it is the clearing that makes space for something new. And as I drift to sleep, I know this is only the beginning of my second chance. The days after David's visit flow differently. There is no sudden transformation, no fairy tale reconciliation, but there is something real: small steps, hesitant gestures, seeds beginning to push through hardened ground. He calls once a week, then twice. Sometimes the conversations last only a few minutes. Other times he lingers, asking about my health, about the garden, about Michael. Each time I hear less of the guarded tone, more of the son I remember. Angela remains more distant. When she speaks on the phone, her voice is polite but thin, like a sheet of paper that might tear with the wrong word. I don't press her. I know she may never welcome me fully, and I make peace with that. It is enough that my son is trying, that the door once slammed shut has opened a crack. Michael stands beside me through all of it. His presence is steady, grounding, never demanding. He doesn't tell me how to feel, doesn't rush me. He simply stands there, driving me to town, sitting by the fire, sharing quiet meals that taste more of comfort than of food. Slowly, I realize something I never allowed myself to before. I belong here, not just as a guest, not just as a man passing through. I belong. One afternoon, as I tend to the flowers near the front steps, I see Michael watching me from the porch. His arms are crossed, his expression soft. "You look different, Richard," he says. "Different how?" I ask, brushing dirt from my hands. "Like a man who finally believes he has a home." I pause, my throat tightening. For years, home meant Clara's laughter, David's footsteps running through the hallway, the smell of oil and grease on my work clothes. When Clara passed and David drifted away, home became a house filled with silence. When the tornado tore it apart, I thought it was the final blow. And yet here I stand, surrounded by blooms, the sun warm on my back, Michael's gaze steady. For the first time in so long, I allow myself to believe him. David begins to visit more often. Sometimes he comes alone, sometimes with Angela. The visits are awkward at first, but with each one, the tension eases. He asks about the factory, about how I learned to fix machines with nothing more than instinct and stubbornness. He asks about Clara, stories he never heard, how we met at a county fair, how she laughed louder than anyone else in the room, how she held our family together when I thought I couldn't. He listens in a way he never did before, his eyes soft, his jaw unclenched. One evening as he leaves, he hugs me again. This time, it lasts longer. He whispers, "I'm trying, Dad. I know it's late, but I'm trying." I squeeze his shoulder, my own voice breaking. That's all I ever wanted. Angela lingers by the car that night. She doesn't say much, but before she gets in, she turns to me. "Richard," she says quietly, "I misjudged you. I was afraid of what it meant to have you here, afraid it would take something from us. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe it gives us more than I thought." Her words are hesitant, but they are hers, and I nod, accepting them without bitterness. Michael watches these moments with quiet pride. He never inserts himself, never claims credit, but I know he has been the bridge. His defense at that dinner table cracked open, a door I thought forever locked. His belief in me gave me the strength to face my son, not with anger, but with truth. As weeks turn into months, a new rhythm emerges. I live with Michael, sharing a life that feels less borrowed and more chosen. David calls regularly, sometimes even stops by just to sit on the porch with me, saying little but staying present. Angela remains cautious, but she no longer frowns when she sees me. Progress is slow, fragile, but real. One morning, David arrives with a box. He sets it on the porch and opens it, revealing old photographs, salvaged from the wreckage of my house. He must have gone back, searching through what little remained. My hands tremble as I lift each picture. Clara holding David as a baby, me standing proudly in my work uniform, birthdays, Christmas mornings, the small moments that built a life. Tears blur my eyes as I look at my son. "I thought you'd want these," he says simply. I cannot speak. I pull him into an embrace, holding him tight. For a moment, it feels like the years of distance, of silence, of rejection, dissolve into the air. Later that week, David brings Ethan, my grandson. I haven't seen him in years, not since he was small enough to sit on my knee. Now he is lanky, his voice low with adolescence, his eyes bright with curiosity. At first he seems unsure, glancing at his father for cues. But when I show him the old photos David rescued, his face lights up. "You used to drive that truck?" he asks, pointing to a picture of me beside my rusted pickup. "I did," I laugh. "She rattled like a tin can, but she never let me down." Ethan grins, leaning closer. "Dad told me you could fix anything. Is that true?" I glance at David, who smiles faintly, pride mixing with regret. I nod to Ethan. "I fixed what I could, sometimes machines, sometimes people, not always perfectly, but I tried." The boy laughs, and in that sound, something mends in me I didn't realize was broken. It isn't just about reconciling with my son, it's about stepping into the life of my grandson, becoming part of the chain I once thought severed. That night, after David and Ethan leave, I sit with Michael on the porch. The stars spread wide, the air cool against my skin. "I never thought I'd see that," I whisper. "What?" Michael asks. "My son, my grandson, here with me, talking, laughing. For years I thought that was gone forever." Michael's hand rests lightly on mine, an anchor. "Storms don't just destroy, Richard. Sometimes they clear the ground for something new." I let his words sink in. The tornado took my house, tore apart the life I thought I knew. But it also led me here to Michael's door, to reconciliation with David, to evenings where I feel not like a burden, but like a man who still matters. The resolution is not a perfect picture. There are still silences, still hesitations, still scars that won't vanish overnight. Angela still keeps a certain distance, David still struggles with words, and Ethan is still finding his place. But there is effort. There is love in the trying. And in this stage of life, I know that trying is what counts. As I close my eyes that night, Michael's steady breathing beside me, my son's voice still echoing in my ear, I realize something extraordinary. I am not just surviving anymore. I am living. I am loved. I am home. If there is one truth my story leaves behind, it is this. Sometimes losing everything is not the end. Sometimes it is the beginning of a life you never expected, one that reveals the strength you didn't know you carried and the love you didn't believe was still possible. The storm that tore apart my house felt at first like it had torn apart my life. Standing in the rubble, clutching 3 garbage bags, I thought I had reached the end of my road. My own son's rejection cut deeper than any wind or rain could, and for a while I believed I was nothing more than a burden, a shadow of the man I used to be. But what I learned is that storms do not just destroy. They clear the ground. They strip away what no longer serves you, and they force you to see what remains. For me, what remained was the chance to rebuild not just a roof, but a bond with my son, and a place in the life of my grandson. What remained was the rediscovery of Michael, whose kindness reminded me that friendship and love can wait quietly for decades and still arrive just in time. To anyone who feels abandoned, unseen, or unwanted, your story is not over. You may be carrying bags that feel too heavy, walking roads that seem too empty, but life has a way of surprising us. Love can return in places we stopped looking. Family can heal in ways we thought impossible. And sometimes, the people who choose to stand by us are just as important, if not more, than the people we once expected. If my journey touched your heart, I ask you to carry its message forward. Treasure the bonds you still have, forgive where you can, and allow yourself to be open to second chances. Life will test us, but it will also offer us moments of grace if we dare to accept them. And if my story gave you even a spark of hope, stay with me. There are many more stories of fathers, of tears, of redemption, of love that refuses to give up, waiting to be told.